States around the country have been passing legislation in an attempt to address the problem of bullying. But in at least one state, efforts to protect kids could end up harming them in other ways. Tara tackles that story next.
The Blaze. Truth lives here.
Then following lunch outside at recess, I was cornered and attacked. I was pushed to the ground repeatedly, up to 20 times. I tried to get away, but I could not. When the recess whistle finally blew and everyone went inside the school, the student who attacked me yelled at me repeatedly, "I'm going to kill you if you tell anyone. I'm going to kill you tomorrow."
That was Jake Ross, a Minnesota student describing the harassment he endured daily in school as a bullying victim. He also serves as a student spokesman in support of a new anti-bullying law called the Safe and Supportive Minnesota Schools Act, currently being debated in the Minnesota State Senate. Now, the proposed measure was based on a task force appointed by Governor Mark Dayton in the fall of 2011 after a wave of student suicides plagued the Anoka-Hennepin School District. The bill is supported by the state's largest teachers union, student coalitions, parents, educators, and groups representing gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender students. So, what's wrong with having a bill in place to help a bullied student like Jake? Well, opponents say plenty. Catherine Kirsten, a senior fellow at the Center for American Experiments, says, "The bill is misleadingly named the Safe and Supportive Minnesota Schools Act is not primarily about preventing bullying. It's driven instead by a political and cultural agenda that's not so much about stopping bad behavior as it is about using the machinery of state education to compel children to adopt politically correct attitudes on human sexuality and alternative family structures." Now, the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis seems to agree, calling the bill an Orwellian nightmare that would usurp parental rights and create re-education camps. Opponents also point out the bill provides an alarmingly broad definition of bullying to include anything that causes emotional distress, and the bill could label students as bullies for simply expressing their religious or political beliefs. And did I mention the newly formed incident report database system the schools would be required to create to keep track of alleged bullying that could stay on a student's permanent record? Joining us now is Susan Richardson, a parent activist in Minnesota, along with other concerned citizens in fighting this bullying bill. Welcome, Susan.
Hi, Tara. Thank you.
So, of course, I had to introduce this as, okay, we've got kids being bullied. I don't think any of us want our children bullied. Seems like a worthy cause to take up. But then we dive into the devil's in the details here, and it looks like this thing is a behemoth. I read some of the bill, actually, and I just want to read something from it that was a little alarming to me. The bullying bill promotes this diversity concept. It says, safe and supportive school programming. Districts and schools are encouraged to provide developmentally appropriate programmatic instruction to help students identify, prevent, and reduce prohibited conduct, value diversity in school and society. That raises a red flag to me that this is more about just bullying.
Yes, Tara, thank you. It is meant to produce a cultural shift in our children. It expands the definition of bullying to include value. And when you're dealing with how that value is perceived in the victim, so everything is based on the perception of the victim as far as whether or not they feel bullied or threatened by something someone has said to them. Now, those students can anonymously report on one another, so it enables one student to harass multiple students. Then the student who has been reported goes to remediation with a school psychologist or a social worker without their parents' knowledge.
Right. There's no parental notification, right? And it says that aspects are that students who dissent from certain state-approved cultural and political attitudes could potentially be referred to the counseling that you're talking about by school authorities for failing to sufficiently value diversity. And this is all without parental notification, right?
That's correct. So the administrators can make the call as to whether or not your student, whether or not they inform you about your student being involved in a bullying incident. Now, we all know that administrators do not come home with us. They don't live with us. They do not know our families. We are responsible. We, the parents, are responsible for our children. Certainly not our school districts and not our state.
Well, you know, this brings up a really important point, and I think that the discussion of bullying in general needs to be tackled by society, because as you saw, I mean, I think all of our emotions were, we were touched when we heard that little boy speak, that bullying is a serious problem and cannot be underestimated, not only the physical, but the verbal as well. But as you said, the devil's in the details, and the battle is won or lost in the definition of terms. So there are a lot of groups in Minnesota that are rightfully saying we have already some regulations in place.
They already have a law on the books now, but
yes.
it's only 37 words according to some folks.
Right.
And just because it's only 37 words, it isn't sufficient.
Right, and also the thing is too is that affords flexibility with different school districts depending on different value systems, etc. I think the danger here is saying there is one code of what we should believe is right and what is wrong, and everyone has to abide by that, and that really is you know, hampering our freedom, I think.
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is about creating more laws that don't benefit the children, that don't benefit the community as a whole. It actually creates a system of division. It allows people to take advantage of that system for their own benefit. And I think you pointed that out very clearly here. And I think parents need to take the responsibility upon themselves and not have that responsibility pulled by the state or by the federal government.
You know, Buck, I look at this, and I am reading the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis, and their objection to this stuff, calling it Orwellian. I read some of the details of this. It really is. They're allowing school administrators to go through kids' cell phones for cyberbullying and to see what they're texting back and forth to each other. I don't think school officials should have this kind of authority. That is up to the parents.
I think it is up to the parents. Also, as somebody who was at different times subjected to the re-education camp of having to sit with diversity educators in college, maybe because he was involved in throwing a party that was a little too much fun, and they decided they were going to have us all sit down and have a talk about cultural normatives and male patriarchy and things that I still don't even know what they were trying to talk to me about. It was just beer and having a good time. Being subjected to that in college, I can see now how the ideological proclivity of the left is always to try to force people. It really becomes a sort of a speech issue, and I worry with some of this stuff. They're trying to do it at a very young age. They're trying to force kids to sort of think a certain way, approach things a certain way. Look, you can't punch people, you can't intimidate them, you can't hurt them. That's true of adults, it's true of kids. The second they start to get into almost being speech police because it's hurting someone's feelings, that's a very tricky area. I just don't know if legislation is I don't have any kids, though, so I don't really know much about that.
Guilt based on perception, I think, is a very scary term, and that I think, Susan, that's part of one of the aspects of this that your organization and as parents, you guys are worried about. Whose perception? You know, if as a Christian, if I believe in certain things, or I may not be in favor of gay marriage, let's say, then that's my right to express that. So that makes me a bully now, according to this law that's putting forth in Minnesota, and my child could potentially be in some kind of database that goes to the state for the remainder of their school years. It could affect their college admissions. I mean, is this kind of another one of the reasons why you guys are so passionate about this?